everybody, and welcome to season 4 of the Talk Busy with Lizzy podcast. I'm your host, Lizzy, and I am so excited for season 4 to begin. This is such a good episode to really start us off in the new year, in the new season. I cannot wait to share so many more people's stories. That the podcast has come so far since I started it. It used to be just me rambling about random things because I like to talk and I wanted to be a news broadcaster. And now I get to have my own show and get to have people on to share their stories. Helping people share their stories just makes me so happy. And so I cannot wait for this season. We have a really great special guest today to kick us off in the new year, kick us off in the new season. Her name is Annelise. I know her as Andy, and she's a global worker, and she got to come on and talk about her experience in Egypt. She got to be there for a little while this last year, and then she is going back very soon for 2 years. So I'm so excited to hear about the culture that she's been immersing herself in and her experience. So without further ado, let's get into it.
I am Annelise. I have lived in Seattle for almost 10 years now. I grew up in St. Louis, and I'm 23, and I am a global worker in the Arab world, specifically Egypt.
So exciting.
Yeah.
So do you want to go through your testimony?
Yeah. So when I moved to Washington, I was in high school, and I went on a short-term mission trip to LA with my youth pastors. And we went to Compton and Skid Row, and I had never, the homeless population there is just insane. Yeah. You can't really put words to it. And so we worked with the LA Dream Center, and we partnered with them and handed out food and groceries. And they, the Dream Center has just a great relationship with locals, and providing and being able to pray for them at the end. And it was a crazy, crazy week. I was 17, and I was talking to some guy on the street, and he was super nice, but I think he had, I'm not sure if he had some mental instability or if he was struggling with substance abuse or what, but he actually pulled a gun out on me. And yeah. And I was just just stood there. I was like, oh yeah, that's a gun. All right. And I was like, well, I gotta catch up with my group. It's so nice talking to you. And I just met on my merry little way, and God really just protected me. And I said, wow, that was the best week of my life, still to this day. And I was like, wow, everything just started to make sense, started clicking. And I was like, okay, maybe this, maybe I'm called into being a global worker. And I was just I don't even know what this means. And so I went on a trip to Africa for 3 months and taught at a school there. And I was I had an internship, and it wasn't how I thought it was. And I was like, I don't know if this is what I'm actually supposed to be doing, what I'm called to. I was like, maybe I'm just called to be, work locally. And so I was working at a homeless shelter for youth for about 2 years. And then I got on to a church planning team in Seattle. Yes. And our pastor asked us to take a spiritual gifts test. And I was like, yeah, I took this in high school, whatever. I didn't think much of it. And my top 3 spiritual gifts, I looked under the jobs. They were shepherding, administration, and I can't remember the other one. But I looked at the jobs that qualified for all of them, and number 1 was worker. And I was like, oh my gosh, that is so crazy. And almost a year ago, I visited Egypt, and just fell in love with it. I went there for like a vacation, just touristy, wasn't thinking anything of it, but then God was like, there, you have more, like, you're going to come back here. I was like, oh, okay. So I was there this past summer for 2 months, and I was already pretty confident that I was going to come back for a couple of years. And I was like, okay, like, and so now I'm leaving in March to go back and learn Arabic more. And so, yeah.
That's awesome. Well, I'm so excited to have you on to talk about it. And then also that you're going back is really exciting.
Yeah. It's, if I could go yesterday, I would. But I also know there's a lot of things that need to be done here, and lots of, I know, work still in me that the Lord has planned. And so, yeah.
So cool. So what was your like most specific draw to Egypt?
I, honestly, the people, the culture there. So it is a Islamic ruled country, and the people there will just automatically think of you as family, and which is just, to me, just like did not make sense. There was, so there they have these people called BOAPs, which they're kind of like doormen or janitors, like for like apartment buildings and just like, business buildings, whatever. And they like take care of the building. They, make sure they all kind of do like sweep like security, or if like there's a plumbing issue, like they take care of it. But for the most part, like they stand outside of the building and they just like keep an eye on the street, make sure everything is okay. And there was this one BOAB on my street that I lived on named Mohammed. There's a few of those there. And he was like 60, 70 years old. And he did not speak any English. And I had very, very broken Arabic. And I would just like walk by him, I was, say hi. And he was like starting to greet me. And we, like, if I had some like leftovers, like I'd go out and share kind of like a meal and hang out and just like chat, from our, very little able to communicate. And if it was like starting to get dark out, he would see me from down the street, and this older man, he would sprint down the street to me and then walk me to my apartment building. And like, that is just how Egyptians are. Like, they see you and they will not, like, if you need directions and they don't speak English, they will walk into the middle of traffic to find someone who speaks English so they can help you like, they will not let you go until you have found like what you are looking for. And that is just like, we don't do that in the States. That's not like normal. If someone doesn't speak English, we push it off as like, that's not our problem. They have to go figure it out. And so just seeing that, and then like having that connection and having that being so taken care of, and then coming to the realization of these people have built their whole lives around a culture and a religion that, I'm not going to see them in heaven, and I just can't deal with that. And it's just the grief that comes with it. And so that was my biggest draw, is the people of, I want to be able to see these people in heaven. And so, yeah.
That's so beautiful. I love that. And I think that's such a cool thing to talk about too, because I think a lot of times as Americans, we think of Islamic countries as very dangerous places. And there are certain ones that are.
Yes.
But it's obviously, you can't encompass everyone.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really cool.
I feel way more comfortable and safe walking around Cairo in the evening by myself than in Seattle, like by myself, because people, they really just kind of take care of each other. Like, they look out for each other, and especially as a foreigner, like they, treat you like they almost like worship you. Their like hospitality goes out the roof. It's crazy. Awesome. But
So cool.
Yeah.
What would you say, obviously, with the hospitality aspect and just that genuine, like, kindness and caring, but what are some other big differences in culture that you've, like, almost culture shocks?
Yeah. Well, the heat, for one.
Fair.
Yeah. It got to like 115 at like most days in the summer, and the power goes out for 3 hours every day to try and conserve on power.
Right.
So that was definitely a culture shock for sure. It is like more culturally appropriate for women to not make eye contact with men, and so like that was a little bit hard. That was like my kind of biggest kind of like mental shift. And so, but until like the men like initiate, and so in America, we, women have a lot more freedom than a lot of other countries, and so, realizing, I've taken some of that freedom for granted. I mean, there is still a long ways to go, but yeah, and understanding of it's not me being able to like, make eye contact or like, shake hands with a man. Like that isn't me showing like I'm independent, I can do this. Like, no, this is what God has called me to do, to be able to talk to these people and to be able to embed myself into this culture, to be a part of it as much as I can. And that it's not like a power struggle. Like it's not that. It's not that at all.
I love that. I'm taking global studies classes.
That's so cool.
Yeah. My favorite class my freshman year was a global studies class. So when I had the opportunity to take another one this year, I was like, yes.
Yeah.
So it's a huge thing, is recognizing the pieces of culture that don't disrupt your biblical beliefs to be able to fit into the culture to better reach them. So I love that you're talking about that, because that's kind of the direction I was hoping this would go. So was that something you were briefed about before going? Is that something you learned there?
Yes. Well, both. They, you can only be so like trained and prepared like so much without like being in it.
Right.
And so part of the process is kind of feeling like you're kind of being thrown into the wolves, but that just is culture shock, like in general. And so there was like, there's trainings and, literature that we read and like videos and all these things like that they prepare us for as much as they can. And they really do like a really great job. Like the team there does like a really great job of like communicating, and their like policies are like, and just like the team life there is like so healthy, which is just like so exciting. And so I'm like, we don't need to make this harder than it, like, living in a foreign country, like away from our families. Like they, just like a fully embrace of like, this is what I wish I would have known. This is what we've seen in the past of just like culture shock, how it affects us.
Yeah.
Let us help you. And so,
So cool. Like being there, obviously, what you said, like just kind of fitting your way into the culture. What are some of the biggest ways that you've been able to reach people there?
Not making myself noticeable, if that makes sense, of like, dressing, like understand, like seeing what other women do there and like paying attention, like for some reason, like I don't know the reason of this, but I don't see like women like drinking or eating like as they're walking in the streets. Like they don't do that. And so, just paying attention to that and like being modest and like in your dressing. And so like, covering your elbows and, wearing pants and, obviously like I'm not Muslim, but like that's part of their culture, not their like religion. And so being able to like connect with myself, and I'm already going to stand out because I am a foreigner in neon white. And so like, I don't need any more like individuality. Like I already stick out enough. And so trying to like, this is like a personal choice of mine of like, I don't wear like super bright colors or like patterns. Like I just stick to just neutrals and stuff like that. And so, like not laughing like super loud, like in the street, like that was hard for them. Like, because just Americans are so loud, which I didn't realize how loud we were. And then I'm like, oh wow, everyone is looking. I was like, oh, my bad. So sorry, everyone. But yeah, that is what I've kind of like taken a part of.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just being absorbent.
Yeah.
And like adapting.
Yes, yeah. Adapting and understanding that, when you go to, no matter what country, especially if it's a country that speaks another language, of you are not going to know anything. And so you feel like you're like, I am an adult. I know how to speak. I know how to give directions. I know how to go to the grocery store. I know how to drive. All of those are wiped off your level of knowledge when you go to and are living in a foreign country, because you don't know how to cross the street. You don't know how to shop for yourself, and you feel so like stupid. And you're like, how, like, and you get so frustrated. And so giving yourself grace and understanding that that is also part of the process and the culture shock. Yeah. And just also just so grateful for the locals there, because they're like, well, they will try and help you. The amount of, Google Translate and pulling people from the bakery, from the butcher, of like, who knows English? Like, yeah. And just like, you're like, nice. I wasn't supposed to stick out, and now they're making it just because I needed to get some chicken. Got it. Like, yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. Great.
That's awesome though. And I really like what you said about it, not like things not being a power dynamic, and not allowing yourself to make it that, because I think being from America, and I mean, a lot of Americans are very focused on social justice and on that kind of thing. Not necessarily bad, but going into another country and trying to push that on, that is not the way to go about it. So I love that you're recognizing like that modesty aspect. And obviously, as a Christian, we are called to be modest, but it still does look different in different cultures. Yeah. And I think that it would be very easy going from America to Egypt or somewhere else and being like, well, I should just be allowed to wear what I want. Yeah. And so I'm just going to do that. Yeah. Instead of being like, no, like that's not how they do things here. And if I actually want to help lead them to Jesus, like we're not going to do that. If I actually want to connect with people, we're not going to do that. So I just like how you said that, not making it into a power dynamic.
Yeah, because they're not coming over. You are one against, how like the average household has about 8 kids there. There's so many people there. Yeah. Like you against all of them, of like you trying to bring your culture into not a chance. Yeah. Not a chance. Yeah. It's just not gonna work out, and you're just gonna waste your energy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously being a mostly Islamic country, like you said, that's a huge part of their culture. It's not just religion. Yeah. And so what are some have you seen any aspects of their culture where you're like, yeah, I'm not going to partake in that?
Probably the marrying really young. And they do have like the call to prayer, which I like respect, but I don't take part in. I'm trying to think of what else. That's a really good question. I mean, I kind of like my headspace is more of like, what can I apply myself to in their culture? What can I take part in, and not like, instead of
what can I not?
Well, yeah, what can I not? And so that's mainly been like kind of my mindset, my headspace, if that makes sense. Yeah. And so What I can. I mean, I've had a lot of the local food, which includes having pigeon, fried pigeon just on your plate, and it's really good. Which you wouldn't think that it would, but it's really, they have pigeon cages on most of their buildings, and they have pigeon fights, and so the losers go to the restaurants.
What?
And it's pretty good.
That's fun.
Yeah. But that's just their normal.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's their chicken, so.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
So one thing I learned in my global studies class is we were talking about common versus specific grace. So specific grace is, what the grace that Jesus gives us through his death on the cross, and that we get to have that when we come to him and accept him. And then common grace is over everybody. So meaning everybody has gifts and talents given from the Lord. Everybody is given certain things, and you can still learn a lot from people who aren't Christian. And so what is one thing that you've really learned being in Egypt?
That if I mess up, one of the many things that I've learned is that if I mess up on something culturally, or if I, say the wrong word in Arabic, that locals are much quicker to give me grace than I am to give grace to myself for messing up. They understand, and give you grace so much more. If you think you're offending them, yeah, it's not they're ideal, but they understand this is not where you're from.
Yeah.
And so giving yourself that grace as well, because they want to help you. Also, probably that I think Egypt is the most beautiful place in the world. I've gone to a lot of different places at a lot of different times and a lot of different things. I think Egypt is the most gorgeous creation on earth. I think it's just the most beautiful place. But with that comes just that much more brokenness of a place. I think I'm God, the most beautiful place that you've ever created, and then there's just that much more grief that comes with it. And so navigating a pretty consistent level of grief while being there with people, of just because you just love them, they become your family. When you're there for so long, they become your family. And as you get to share the love of Jesus and how Jesus talked and had relationships with people. And the reality is that they may never come to know Jesus, and which is just heartbreaking, but one can only pray for.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Have you been able to see anybody come to Jesus yet, or?
I've not. So not yet. I am a believer. Yes, not yet. I still keep in contact with a lot of my friends there. So it is actually in some Arab countries, including Egypt, it is illegal. So when you are born, you're given an ID card, and so it's stamped either Christian or Muslim, and you can't if your ID card shows Muslim, you can't get into Christian churches, and they won't allow you because it's as a safety precaution. And then if you have your card and it says Christian, you can't get into any mosque. And so so your ID card can't be switched. It's illegal for a Muslim to become a Christian, but it's allowed for a Christian to become a Muslim. And so they have a lot more to lose than we do, because not the government will put them in jail if you're a local, and that's the government. Your family, typically your family and friends, it's way worse. And even if your parents don't agree, or if they're not the one who gives their heart to Jesus, they can still lose their jobs. just for being related to you. And, your kids can get kicked out of school. You'll lose your job. And family is everything there. You'll get shamed from your family, and that doesn't just wipe away. That is a forever thing. And, whether it's financially or that, a lot of families like multi-generational live in the same house together. Mm-hmm. You are now homeless, and now everyone knows why. Right. And so they have a lot more to lose. I know of friends of people that have, and I'm so grateful for. And so it does take a lot more time and relationship, because the stakes are so high.
Yeah, absolutely. What is the biggest thing that you wish you could take from Egypt and bring to the States?
Besides the food, so good. Besides
the food and the beauty.
Yeah, besides the food and the beauty, how they interact with foreigners, their hospitality. Because I grew up in the Midwest, and so I already have kind of Midwestern hospitality, but Egyptian hospitality blows that out of the water. And then you come to Seattle, and there's the Seattle freeze, which just makes you feel so isolated. And so I wish the hospitality could transfer over a lot more. Yeah.
Yeah. I love that. That's something I'm really into, is hospitality.
Yeah.
So I love that. It's so cool to hear about another culture's hospitality.
Yeah.
I'm going through the book Extraordinary Hospitality for Everyday People, I think.
Oh, and that's super cool.
It's really good. And it goes through your 7 best, her 7 best tips. So far, I'm doing them week by week.
Yeah.
So I've gone through generosity, compassion, and this week's is humility.
That's so cool.
What
really what falls under
So generosity was just how can you be generous with everything you have? Yeah. So your time, your possessions, your house, your talents, your practical skills.
Yeah.
And then who needs those?
Yeah.
And then compassion was talking about who is it hard to have compassion for in your life. And then how can you show them compassion? Yeah. Because it's very easy to be oh, I'll show you compassion.
Yeah.
But I don't want to show you compassion.
Yeah.
So you're talking about the foreigner aspect here, that's not as common.
Yeah.
And then humility is just kind of for me, so it was about tackling your pride and going to war on your pride and what's stopping you from showing humble hospitality. And it was talking about how even not taking help can be prideful. Mm-hmm. And I was that's me. That was the one that I struggle with. So even Aaron and I hosted, him and I both hosted a Friendsgiving, which was so fun. Yeah. But our good friend Kim, every time he asks me, hey, how can I bring anything? Can I help? And I'm always no, I've got it.
Yeah.
And then he talked to me a night or two ago, and he's hey, I'd love to cook sometime. And I was oh, it's not you,
it's not, you're not accepting help on the fault of your own weaknesses. Yeah. It's to gain even more strength and community.
Yeah. 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 So just realizing hey, I could be a little more humble.
Yeah.
And be
I'm the same way. No, I got it. Don't worry. Decor, food, everything. Yeah. Everyone just show up. That's all I need.
Yep. Yeah. So that was my biggest thing. So that's this week. So I'm really trying to focus on yeah, you can bring this. Yeah. Yes, you can help me with that.
Delegating.
Yeah. Yeah. Wedding planning. Yeah. Having to deal with being okay, you can do that. I can give things up and yeah. So definitely something I'm working on.
That is a timely book.
Yes. I I had another really good question for you, and it's like slipped my mind.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I'll just go to one of the ones I really wanted to ask, which, what are some stories from there that you would like to share?
Yeah. So on, I think it was like our second or third day there. So during my internship this past summer, there were 9 other interns with me. And so we were there for 6 weeks, and our team had us do the amazing race. And so we have to go out in the streets of Cairo, and we have, these different places that we have to go to, scavenger hunt to check off, and we have to navigate the city on our own. We have to get a taxi, like on our, not knowing any Arabic, saying like giving directions. We're like, we just got to figure it out. Basically, we have to get lost and then find our way back.
Yeah.
And me and these 2 other girls, one of the things were on the list was go get lunch at like a local place, and I was like, so we're going to do that first.
I need my fuel.
I was like, it is too hot out here to not be full. Okay, so I'm like, I don't know y'all like well enough yet. You guys can't see my hangry side. Like, we got to get this covered now. And so we went to this like restaurant, and we were sitting, and there were these 2 girls sitting at the top of the table next to us, and like what they had to eat, we had no idea like what it was, but it looked really good. And so we asked them, we were like, hey, like, so sorry to bother you, but like what is that? Like, we want to order that. That looks really, really good. And they were like, oh, it's like, I forgot the Arabic word for it, but basically it's a falafel sandwich. Oh. And so we were like, oh, awesome. I feel like you can't really go wrong with that. That sounds awesome. So we all ordered falafel sandwiches, and then we ended up just like talking. They asked us like, where are you from? And we ended up pulling our tables together, and they were like kind of around our age. Their names are Panda and Ava, and they were asking us like, why are you in Egypt? You're like, oh, well, we go to school here. We take Arabic classes. And they're like, what? Like, why would anyone want to be in Egypt? Like, and to them, like everyone, like most people are trying to like be able to leave Egypt. And they're like, why would anyone come here like willingly? And they're like, it's so gorgeous here. And also like Arabic is such a beautiful language. Like, who better to learn Arabic from than Arabs? So that's why we're here. And the 2 other girls, so they started asking us like questions about like, what do you guys think about like dating in America? Like blah, blah, blah. And we're like, oh, well, like we want like a godly man, like one that like, they pray and they read their Bible. They, are full of the Spirit. And, we had told them and made known that like we are Christians. And they started asking us questions about the Bible and about God. And we were like, wait, what? Like, oh, this is happening now. This is day 2. Oh, okay. Got it. Okay. And I was also like, the 2 intern girls, I didn't know them. I barely knew their names. And I'm like, these girls could be crazy. Like, they could be like the people on the sidewalk with the "you're going to hell" signs. Like, I'm like, I don't know them. I don't know their story. They could say something super out of whack. But God just like used those like conversations, and the girls, and we like, that was our first stop on our trip, and we just kept on talking. The girls that we were talking to, Panda and Ava, they canceled their plans. We ended up being at the falafel shop for 7 hours, them asking us questions about the Bible, asking us about God, and we asked them about the Quran, about Islam, and just like getting to know them, and just like, wait, like, it was really cool. And so we got dinner with them, and my other intern friends, don't know any of their backstory, know nothing.
Right.
But God just like used each one of us. It was like a symphony of, when one of us didn't really know how to like have like the right words to answer a question, like another one chimed in and then like gave, another one gave context, and like all of that, like it just like flowed. And I was like, this is crazy. This is nothing like the Spirit is here. Like this is nothing short than like a movement of God, because I'm like, this is crazy. I was like, I'm like, I've been here for 48 hours. Like this does not happen.
Yeah.
Like it is not a part of the Islam religion to ask questions. They are like, it is very like, you do not ask questions. Like you like believe what you are told and you don't second guess it. And so we're like, what is going on? And so we still like keep in contact with them and go to dinner with them. And yeah, I'm super excited to see them like go back.
Yeah. Have you read Seeking All of Finding Jesus?
No, I haven't.
Okay, you should read it.
Okay,
it's
I will.
really good.
Yeah.
It's just a great example of like how relationships can like create that change in someone's heart.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously it's God really doing the work, but you know, through us and everything. And it's my favorite book, like of all time. It's beautiful. It's helped me in my own faith of understanding things. Really does a great job of explaining the Trinity.
Awesome.
And yeah, it's his, like, he was a devout Muslim.
Mm-hmm.
And then after going to school and college, he met this guy. They were best friends, would talk about religion all the time. It almost ended their friendship, but they were at one point, but they knew that it was like important to talk about.
Yeah.
And so they did they kept talking, and he eventually became a Christian through like dreams. So it was like just a mix of lots of things, because in Islamic culture, I'm sure you know, dreams are huge, very important. And so it was just such a good book. So you should totally read it.
That like sounds like my favorite book. Have you ever heard of the book called Abdul and Mr. Friday? Mm-hmm. It is kind of similar. It is a global worker, and that was living in Afghanistan, and he was at like a kind of part of leading a milk program in a refugee camp. Mm-hmm. And he, one of his employees, like they just became really, really good friends, Abdul. And they ended up like having to leave Afghanistan, and then they moved to Pakistan, and Abdul came with them because of their close friendship, and just like, I love working with you. I'll follow you anywhere. Mm-hmm. And, you know, neither of them like pressed each other about, like they knew and they respected each other's like religions, and they like loved each other like more. And at the end of the book, like it was just like they both came to the conclusion of like, I don't want to go to heaven without you. And it was just like so beautiful, so crazy. And it just like gives all these different times of like all where like the Taliban like were involved, and like they were on like a hit list, and like how like the Lord just like provided protection like for both of them, and like both of them rejoicing. And so, yeah, but I want to read, because it sounds like that.
So you'll have to send me your book, and I'll send yours.
Switch. Okay, awesome, perfect.
What is the number one thing you want Americans to know about Egyptians, or Egypt in general?
I'm going to say in Arabs in general.
Okay.
They are not... Arabs have a really bad name in America. Mm-hmm. And that is not who they are. Just like there are some Americans that don't speak for us all, but they, you know, have made an impression on other countries, and they're the ones who have the mic, so to say. And that doesn't speak for the whole congregation. Yeah. And so same with Arabs. And so just because some actions and some, you know, things in the past, like there's faults on both sides, and there's, you know, no one's perfect, but because there is there's a language barrier half the time that isn't able to blend and be communicated. And so, that Arabs are a lot nicer than you think. They're a lot kinder, and yeah. Yeah.
I just listened to, I mean, I only saw a clip of it, but it was Candace Owens and George Janko talking.
Mm-hmm.
And she was saying how bad she feels for, like, the way she perceived Arabs growing up. And she's like, yeah, it was just really cool to, like, recognize that.
Yeah.
Of her being like, this is how I was raised
to
view them.
Yeah.
And now I've realized I shouldn't have.
Yeah.
So I'm going to apologize for that, but now I'm going to move on and I'm going to view them in a better light.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. I grew up, my father is very racist, and I grew up in the Midwest, and I didn't even realize that that's, that was the mindset that I was, like, growing up with, and I didn't understand that. And so when I moved to Seattle, where it's a melting pot of everyone, and I would, like, make jokes that were not okay, and people would be like, hey man, like, and in my high school, white people were the minority. It was primarily Asian. And so I was like, oh, I thought that, and just the wheels turning. I was like, oh, okay, my bad. Wasn't my intent. Those are what my words said, you know, and that was, but I'm like, oh, I didn't, that's not, like, that was the impact that it had, is they were racial jokes, and I don't want to, just fly over that, but, and learning of, oh, that is not okay. Yeah. And so, and then being educated, moving on, Yeah.
Well, and, like, something, again, back to my global studies class, we were talking about how your intentions are invisible. Yeah. The impact is all that's seen. Yeah. And so I think that's important. But I also, one thing, like, coming from a more conservative family and everything, like, one thing I really do value about coming from, like, living in a more liberal area is that melting pot aspect. Yeah. That, like, I've grown up in, I wouldn't say in my high school was necessarily white was the minority, but definitely in my elementary school. Yeah. Especially my friend group. My, like, close girlfriends, 2 of us were white, and the rest were different races. Yeah. And so, like, we talked about this in my social work class of just, like, yeah, I don't know. It's growing up, I loved that and really valued that. I maybe probably took it for granted too, because I didn't really realize there were places that wasn't happening. Yeah. Like, I was just like, this is how it is. People of all different colors live together and live kindly together, and, like, get to participate in each other's cultures. Yeah. Like, that wasn't something I saw as weird or different. That was just my everyday life. Yeah. And I really loved that. And so even, like, hearing about how we needed to have more diverse things, more diverse this, more diverse that, I was like, what do you mean? Yeah. Like, what do you mean? Yeah. I have so many diverse friends. Yeah. All of them look different. Yeah. And so to me, that was weird. Like, that you needed to, like, push that. I was like, but that's
just
my
like,
life.
Yeah, you're like, wait, people don't have that? That isn't other people's normal? Yeah, totally.
And so I think coming from this, and, like, I just already had the value of everyone looking different, that I didn't realize we had to push for that value. Yeah,
which is so weird. You're like, oh, all right. Yeah. This is where... Got it.
Yeah. And I'll say, like,
weird.
High school is definitely a little different. Because I do think, because my elementary school was definitely, like very mixed economically too. Whereas my high school is very mixed economically, because you pulled from all these different schools. But a lot of them, the bigger schools, had richer people, I guess I would say. And so, like, I feel like it did look different going into high school. But yeah, it was just crazy to me that's not, like, a normal thing.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. But growing up, like, all of my friends were white, because there's like -3 Asian people in Missouri. And then, and I was like, now I'm like, I don't really have any white friends. Yeah. Oh, there's another thing that like I wish that could like transfer over to the States. Or just like learning of, like, you're in like a grocery store and you see like a woman in like a full like hijab, and like noticing like how small they they make themselves, because they are like, they feel like such like a fish out of water. The grocery stores are so different. Exactly how like we feel in other countries going to a grocery store. There's all these different things, and you can't find any of the foods that you grew up with. All of your comfort foods like don't exist in this land, and so like all of your things that you use as a crutch aren't available. And but just like being intentional of like seeing if people look like they're from a different place than you, being intentional and making them feel welcome, because it's just so sad of like, America's a big place and they have a loud voice, and make that voice a good one. And so make that a welcoming one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So my last question I ask everybody is, how can we be praying for you?
Honestly, is just like navigating grief of what, like, I am so excited that to go and to be there, and that is like what I'm called to do, and I love it there. But there is a grief of not being there, and there's a grief of being there. And so like this next holiday season is like my last one in America for a couple of years, and so things are just going to look very different, and I'm excited for like the different kind of variations of holidays that we do there and stuff like that. But just like it's just different. And so with my family, like things like I won't see them for a really long time, and when I'm there, like I will be missing American things, and while I'm here I'm missing Egyptian things, and so just like the in between.
Thank you guys so much for listening to this week's episode. I hope you guys enjoyed it, because I definitely did. It was nice to talk to Andy again after so long. I hadn't seen her since before she left to go to Egypt. If you want to donate to help her go back for 2 years, you can do so at the link I will put below. Make sure you are following us on all social media platforms. All of those are linked below as well. Whether you're listening to this or watching this on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or YouTube, I just want to say thank you so much for all of your support. Another great way to support the podcast is by joining the Patreon, which I'm excited to do a lot more with this season. So make sure you go and check that out. But thank you guys again so much for listening to this week's episode. I am so happy to be back, and I can't wait for many more stories to come in this season of the podcast. So thank you guys. I'll see you guys for next week's episode. Have a great rest of your week, and God bless.